Hi, 10th graders. Happy Thursday. Welcome to week 5, lesson 23. My name is Mr. Benson. As I'm sure you know by now, let's get started. What do you call an alligator in a vest? An investigator. So just a reminder, we're on day 4 of this week, which means you should be watching the video right now. That's called ELA G10 W5 L23. The text we're going to read today is the poem Money. You read it yesterday for the first time, and we're going to revisit it today. And then today you're going to be working on a bunch of different things in relation to the story Money, and we'll talk about them in a second. And then when you get down to lesson 23, you can see all the materials you need for today, but it's pretty standard, pretty much the stuff that you use every day you'll also need today. The learning target for today is I can complete close read annotations to analyze characterization present in a poetry selection. Again, the poetry selection is Money, and you're going to dig a little bit deeper into the poem today, since you already completed the first read yesterday. Engage in close read annotations to really just make more sense of the characters of the poem. For the read, think, talk, write protocol today, you're going to be doing a lot of really enriching activities. For read first, you're going to engage with a family member, a caregiver, or friend first by reviewing your first read annotations. And then you're going to perform the close read steps for paragraphs 4 through 6 specifically. So not the whole entire poem, but really just focus in on paragraphs 4 through 6. And you're going to be looking specifically for the author's use of characterization. So how does the author build out the characters in our poem? And you're going to use the close read routine like you normally do, which is the annotate, question, and conclude process. And as you annotate, you really want to be looking for words and phrases related to luck or wonder. Now, the think part involves basically thinking about what kind of people the children's parents are. So really think about not only just the lessons the parents taught the children and their priorities in life, but what kind of people they are. And then on your note catcher, you're going to write out some adjectives that come to mind when you think about the children's parents. So describe them as much as you can based on what you know about them in this poem. And then because this was listed in bold here, that's a reminder to you that you have to write your answer to this on the note catcher. So if you go to the next page in your packet, you'll see the start of the note catcher. For the talk section, you're going to talk to someone about this question. Even though the family does not have a lot of extra money to help others, it is important to note that they do give money to the church. What does this detail suggest about their characters? So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but today you're really going to dig into that part where they mention that they donate money to church. Sometimes it's a little bit of money, and then once a month it's actually more money. So you have to figure out, what does this tell us about them as characters, even though we know that in most of their life they really don't spend a lot, or they try to save a lot, but they are willing to give money to the church. What does that tell us about them as characters? And then you're going to complete the writing section, which is basically writing an answer to this question. The question is, in the poem Money, how do the parents decide what they want and what they need? How do they try to teach their children about wants versus needs? Use specific examples from the text in your answer. So you really want to think about how the parents differentiate between what they want and what they need, and how do they try to teach their children about this difference between wants and needs. And then because in the writing section you saw something listed in bold, again, that just means that you are required to write your response, not in the box for the writing section, but in the note catcher, which is found on the next page. And then as always, you're going to close out with the same two things. First, you're going to share your writing with someone. And then after you're done with everything, you're going to read a book for 20 minutes and make sure you document this reading in the reading log. So the quick model today is going to be around characterization, specifically for the parents in the poem Money. And if you read the read and think section again, you'll remind yourself of what you have to do when it comes to characterization for the parents. But we'll quickly go over it again right now. So for the read section, you have to close read paragraphs 4 through 6. So you can feel free to reread the whole thing, but definitely just focus on paragraphs 4 through 6. And you're going to annotate, question, and conclude like you normally do when you close read something. And then you're going to, from there, move on to the think part. And I'm saying this now because you have to be thinking about this as you're close reading. And you have to basically finish off by writing down some adjectives that come to mind when you think about the children's parents. You're really trying to describe the children's parents by using adjectives. So I thought the best way to model this for you would be to basically read each paragraph with you, paragraph 4, paragraph 5, and paragraph 6. And then after each paragraph, sort of engage in a think aloud and model for you 2 different adjectives that I'm going to pull out for the parents based on what I read there. So I encourage you to find way more than 2 adjectives. You also may find different adjectives than what I list here, which is totally fine. But I'm just going to model for you my thinking when I have to make assumptions and inferences about the parents and use adjectives to describe them. So I'll start with paragraph 4. I'll read and then I'll go over some adjectives that I found. She buys the children school supplies and food. She pays the 2 boys for mowing the yard together and weeding her flower bed. She gets a new sewing machine for her birthday from the children's father, and she buys fabric and thread and patterns and makes dresses for the girls to save money. She tells the children each to put a dime or quarter into the collection plate at church, and once a month she puts in a little sealed white envelope. And the ushers move slowly along the ends of the pews, weaving the baskets through the congregation, and the organist plays a long piece of music. Okay, so we learned a lot here about the parent, specifically the mother. And the first adjective that I think perfectly describes the parent, specifically the mother, I would say is frugal. You can tell they don't really spend. They're really careful about what they spend money on. I don't want to use the word cheap because that has a negative connotation. Frugal may have negative connotation too, but I'm just sort of using it as they're very mindful of their money. If they're going to give their kids money, it's going to be after they earn the money by completing chores around the house. And even when she receives a present, like for her birthday, the sewing machine, she's going to still use that to be able to provide for her family and save her family money by making dresses for the daughters. I also included the adjective methodical, which means there's a method behind what she does. Like, she's very intentional. This sort of goes along with frugal, but she's very intentional about how she spends her money. She doesn't seem to waste much. And even if one would argue that she's wasting money at church, it's very clear to her that that's not a waste of money, and to the rest of the family, because they must really value their faith. Okay, let's keep going to paragraph 5. Whisk brooms, magazine subscriptions, anything you need hauled away, Little League raffle tickets, cookies, chocolate candy. Can I do any yard work again and again? Hairbrushes, Christmas cards, do you need help with your ironing one time? And more came calling at the front door, while the children were sometimes eating, sometimes playing. Their faces would soften with a kind of comfort in the authority of mother or father, with a kind of wonder at the needy callers. So we're learning here all the different people that came to the door and the different goods and services they offered. And ultimately, the kids would watch the faces of these people as they sort of begged and asked for the parents to buy these goods and services from them. And they sort of knew what the end result would be every time, that the parents would never really ever probably give money and buy the goods or services that these people were offering. So the first adjective that comes to mind in this paragraph is dismissive. That's a personal interpretation. I don't think someone has to be dismissive by literally dismissing someone and saying shoo. I think they're dismissive because it seems like they've already made up their mind about these door-to-door salespeople. It doesn't really matter. It could be the best deal ever, and it could be the best resource, but because they just don't believe in giving money to other people, because they really care about protecting themselves and providing for their own family, they're really dismissive because they're not really even giving the people out the door consideration. They know they're going to sort of turn them away, and the kids know that the parents are going to turn them away even before they hear their pitch or hear what they're having to sell, hear what they're selling. And then with this, I think there's a level of superiority. They don't necessarily come out and say it, and the author isn't really directly suggesting that, but it seems like there's this level of superiority that even if they do work hard for their money, the people that are coming to the door are beneath them, that it doesn't really even matter what their background is or what they're trying to sell. We feel superior to them. That's how the parents come across, that they feel superior to really anyone else, but mainly the people that come to sell at the door. And then paragraph 6. Their father left for work every day early and came home for dinner and almost always went again on Saturday in his car. Their mother opened a savings account for each child and into each put the first $5. The children felt proud to see their names in the passbooks, checkbooks, and wanted to know when they could take the money out. But they were told they had to save their money and not spend it. They felt a kind of pleasure in these mysteries, to know that there were things you would understand later when you grew up and had your own house, and while your children were eating their dinner and making too much noise the way you did. You knew it was true. The doorbell would ring, the familiar surprise of it. Who would it be? And someone would be holding a little worn book or a bundle of dish towels, or once an old man, but perhaps he only looked old with his beard, came with bunches of carnations, white, red, and pink, and he too was turned away. All right, this is a really powerful paragraph. I mean, it's the last paragraph, but also it's really just, this is the shift between like what is happening in these children's lives, like with how they're witnessing their parents and what they're doing to people that come to the door, how they're turning them away automatically, even without like really listening to what they have to say. It's showing that this is sort of like going to be passed on from generation to generation. Like the kids are actually like looking forward to this level of stability of like knowing that someone's going to come to the door and they're just going to turn them away. It doesn't even matter what it could be. It could be like the most beautiful thing, like the flowers, the carnations, white, red, and pink, but they're going to be turned away. That person's going to be turned away because to them, it doesn't matter what the item is. They just don't feel like it's their responsibility to give money to these people. So, and this also there's a lot of words here that do relate to luck or wonder. I mean, the word mystery is really intentional. It's like, yes, it's a mystery, but like who's going to come to the door, but it's not really a mystery what the outcome is going to be. Like they know what's going to happen when their parents see these people at the door. And the word surprise as well too. They can be surprised by like what the person is saying or selling, but ultimately there's no surprise or wonder in what the outcome is going to be. So the adjectives I use for this paragraph to describe the parents are, the first one is practical. So like the first part of the paragraph really just talks about how they are saving a lot and they're saving for their children. They're practical. This is connected to methodical. They have like a method. They know that like what they do now is going to impact their children in the future. So to them, like the best way to provide for their children is to save for them, and they're practical. They're not like over saving, or they're not preparing at all. They're just being practical. They probably read a book or heard like from someone that's an expert of what to do, and they're just taking that advice to heart. I also said the word repetitive, which is not something that may come to mind right away when thinking about these parents, because they have a routine, and routines aren't always repetitive, but I mean repetitive more in the sense of like it's repetitive and predictable of like what they do when these people come to their door. It's just a repetitive way of handling it. There's no like, while the people may differ and while what they're selling may differ, their response and the way they treat these people, it's repetitive, it's predictable. It's like clockwork. Like if a person came to their door the same time every day, it wouldn't matter what they were selling. They would be repetitive in how they would approach the situation. They may change what they say to the person to like, kindly put them down and say, no, thank you, I don't want to buy what you're selling. But ultimately, the act would be repetitive. They would go to the door, they'd listen for a little bit, and they would still turn the person away. What's also repetitive is like it's rubbing off on the children, because it's like that's part of their routine too. It's like they are expecting this to happen, and they're sort of watching and waiting for it to happen. So they're also like turning into this repetitive kind of person as well too. This predictable, follow a really rigid routine kind of person. So these are just 6 adjectives I used, and I like the strategy of doing it paragraph by paragraph, because while we can reflect as a whole about the characters in the story, characters often shift throughout stories, right? They may be like this in one paragraph, and then in a different paragraph, they actually show a brand new character trait. So it's important to really go paragraph by paragraph and just pick apart the characters' motivations and actions in each paragraph, because they're isolated. And this sort of helps you then make further inferences about like how their way of living and their way of operating is going to rub off on the kids later on in the future. The learning target for tomorrow, lesson 24, is I can plan and write a short story that answers a question left open by one of the poetry selections from this week. So you're going to basically write a short story, and it's going to be a response to a question that was left unanswered by one of the two poems this week. So you get to choose what poem you write your short story for. As always, thank you so much for learning with me today. It was a pleasure. A few quick reminders. Number 1, don't forget to talk about your lesson with someone. Number 2, read 20 minutes and complete a reading log entry. The reading log is at the front of your packet, so make sure you go back to the front of your packet to find the reading log. And number 3, practice reading fluency using the first or second page of your weekly reading. So if you forgot everything about fluency, that's okay. Go back to the front of your packet. There's directions there, and you can use your weekly reading for the fluency work. As always, email your teacher if you need any support. You should know their email by now, but in case you don't, this is an example of how an email would look in the district. It's just the first name, last name, @DetroitK12.org. Hope everyone has a great day, and to remember, keep learning.